Hello, everybody. Just making sure you can hear me because yesterday I had sound problems. So if you're in the chat, just let me know if you can hear me. I'm pretty confident you can. I did a test run earlier. So yesterday I was supposed to go live, and 5 minutes in, I started getting all these people in the chat saying, can't hear you, can't hear you. And somehow something went goofy with my microphone. So I think we fixed it today, and I think we're good. I think I am loud and clear. So let me know in the chat if you can hear me. So I'm doing a little earlier tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern time. I usually do 8 o'clock Eastern time, and thought I'd just get on here for a little bit just to touch base, talk about the week that was, and also just kind of give my my opinion of things and observations that have happened over the course of the last week in the restoration. I hope everybody had a great week. I want to say I'm really happy with the episodes that we did release this week. One was Jason Olson and his Rusty, his co-host for the Two Converts podcast, which I thought was really interesting. And I really thought that the interview that we did with the Rabbi Joel Carnes was really good, and getting really good positive responses from people. And the rabbi's been really pleased with the response that we've been getting in that episode as well. So again, if you're here and you're listening, just hop in the chat and make sure I'm getting a signal. I'm assuming I'm not, because nobody's saying they can't hear me, so that's good. So we'll get started here in a second, and just kind of wanted to go over a few things. So I've been a guest on a few different programs this week as well. I wanted to touch base on two of them that I was on. I want you to check out, if you haven't, Zion Media, which is a relatively new YouTube channel. Late last night put out an interview with me, and I thought it was a really good interview. And I've actually picked up a handful of subscribers as a result of that episode. So I want to thank my friends over at Zion Media. I'm going to have you guys come on my program soon to talk about your interesting program. If you're into the end of days and latter day scriptures and prophecies, that channel is something that you would probably find of interest. I also wanted just to talk about one of the main reasons I wanted to talk tonight was about the Fairview, Texas temple situation. Now, I ended up going on Mormonism with the Murph earlier the week, and I'll give you a little backstory. So Stephen, I'm sure he won't mind, got a lot of flack for having kind of what was viewed as a biased, or just maybe not biased, but a one-sided affair when he had the original panel discussion about the Fairview, Texas temple, and the Project High. Jack here, good. I'm assuming you hear me, so that's great. Thanks for hopping on. I think it's the first time I've talked to you before. And by the way, if you have any questions or comments, please hop in the chat. Let's chat. And if you would like to give us a super chat contribution and get a shout out from yours truly, now would be the time to do it. You can give 99 cents, you can give $50, whatever. Also, if you want to financially support us, I do have links in the description for other ways you can financially support us. Not doing this for the money, but always think it's cool when people donate. It's just kind of nice to know that people are willing to, help you out and give you a little bit, a few bucks here and there. It's always greatly appreciated. So we are delayed by almost a day for my normal live feed. I do have a handful of people in the chat now, and in the watching now. So I'll get started about like I was saying, I was talking to Stephen Murphy of Mormonism the Murph a week ago today, and I was like, Steve, I said, did you have anybody in that panel discussion that defended the church's position? He's like, no. I said, I think you might want to try to balance things out. So that gave him the impetus to kind of want to give another panel discussion about the Fairview, Texas thing. So if you watch Mormonism with the Murph, I encourage you to watch both panel discussions regarding the Fairview, Texas temple. Also, by the way, give thumbs up so this gets in front of more people's eyes as well. So just give this episode a thumbs up while we're at it, because again, this is an unusual day and time. I don't normally live broadcast on Saturdays. Usually it's Friday nights was when I do it, but we had technical difficulties. So I wanted to talk about why I took the position that I took. Now, I did want to say that there was somebody with a Native American background who said that I was saying some things about religious liberty in the First Amendment and fleeing religious persecution. And this person kind of said, I felt like you were ignoring the plight of the Native Americans. And I kind of sounded like a Christian nationalist at times. And I got back to them, and this was on the Mormonism with the Murph comment section on that episode. And I told him I'll address that on my live feed yesterday. Well, I couldn't do it yesterday because of sound problems. So I did want to say that, they made the point that, Native American religions weren't actually even really granted full status until the 1970s. And by the way, it's from my understanding, I think Native Americans weren't even granted full citizenship until the 1920s, or citizenship by, I believe, Calvin Coolidge. So yeah, that's a blind spot on my part, and I want to thank the person for message and writing that comment, because I do think that it's important that we do address the unfair things, the biases that were done against the Native Americans, and so I want to honor them. And yes, they definitely have gotten the raw deal. Let's just say I think most decent human beings would agree that Native Americans have gotten the raw deal throughout the history of this country. It's a sad story, and it's a stain on our national psyche, if you will. So I wanted to address that. But I was taking a pretty aggressively First Amendment approach to my argument on Mormonism with the Murph. And I wanted to kind of explain why I do that, because first of all, I come from, I come from a Republican background, but although the Republican Party that exists today is much radically different than anything I recognize, so I feel like I'm somewhat politically homeless. But I do think that, small government, small limited government, low taxation, and less regulations are ideal, is kind of what I'd like to see the government. So I don't like it when we have all these zoning laws and just excessive zoning laws and all these crazy rules and regulations that people have to follow. And I feel like it's just government has too much control. So it comes from like a libertarianish position about government control over things. But I feel very strongly that our country was founded by people who were fleeing religious persecution, primarily from Europe. And essentially, I think it's really important that we recognize that the Western Christian civilization was founded on Christianity in many ways, and that traditionally in all Western societies, the largest facility in every community was a church cathedral, a building were often the largest buildings. And so that's part of the Western tradition. So I think we have to be honoring of these things about the West as well. And so I take the position that, minimal amount of government regulation over people's lives and over religion, over everybody, because I do think that the less government is better. That's just a position I take. Okay, you can agree or disagree with it, but it's an honorable position, and people who are progressives, there's an honorable history of being a progressive in this United States. As a matter of fact, one of the most important progressives in the history of this country was William Jennings Bryan, who was an evangelical Christian. He was one of the leading progressives of the Democrat Party in this country, and was the Democrat nominee like 3 times, and also the Populist Party nominee, I think, population as well. As Bambi says, the First Amendment all the way. So I tend to take a First Amendment, real strong position on the First Amendment. So that's why I don't like to get in all the weeds about technicalities and rules and regulations, because it's almost like, well, this is a religious institution. Religious institutions have always had a privileged place in our country. And I say that with the idea that, that's part of the compact that we made with the American people in the colonies. There would be religious freedom and exemptions, and we wouldn't have a state church, and we wouldn't favor one group over another. So the argument is that the church is suing to expand First Amendment rights or religious rights. And that would be one thing. So all churches would benefit, including the mosque and including the Methodist Church, the McKinney, Texas mosque, and the Methodist Church that was voted down. They would have an opportunity to actually build their facilities if they are victorious. So, and again, I do think that you also have to be a good neighbor. I think it's really important that you do politics well. I think the fact that it was 5-0 against the church shows me that the church, they dropped the ball, and they could have done it better with PR and working with them. My best example ever out there was when the church flew in Steve Young to go to the city council of Kirtland and to convince them to close the main road in their historic site so that it'd be safe for pedestrians. And they were that good. They knew how to work it, So I know that their church and PR people are better able to do these kind of things. I think they were caught flat-footed being voted down 5-0. So I think their strategy was not really well thought out. That's just my humble opinion there, but I don't think it's too far off. And I think everybody in the panel agreed with that as well. So yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation to have. I'm arguing in favor of the Satanic Temple. Arguing in favor of the mosque. I'm arguing in favor of the Catholic Cathedral, the Jehovah's Witness Watchtower Society. What do they call them? Kingdom halls. Yeah. In other words, I'm going to, be on their side. Again, they're not to be treated as just secular businesses and corporations. Religious institutions are separate and are given a more privileged position in our country. And personally, I think it should, although I definitely think there should be more oversight. I do feel like there should be more transparency. I do think the records of all churches should be open and available to the public if you have a tax exemption. So I do think that there should be transparency as well. It's only fair. If you're not paying taxes, then people should probably know at least where you're spending the money as well. And are you benefiting the communities that you're in, or are you just taking money out and not reinvesting in the communities? I think those are certain things that we could maybe have some compromises on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Jacob Hansen's interview with Trent Horn that was on Pints with Aquinas a couple nights ago. I have to honestly say that I was kind of disappointed in Trent. I didn't think he did a really good job. And I actually reached out to one of my friends who's a Christian evangelical scholar. And I said, are there any other Christian apologists in the Protestant evangelical world that could do a better job than Trent? And he said, no. So unfortunately, this is the issue. Apologetics, for the most part, isn't an effective means of having conversations with the Restoration. So I was talking to, okay, let me make sure. They could have worked with them. It felt a lot like do it or else. Yeah, I think that's the mistake they made. I agree with transparency. Have a privileged place might require some privileged responsibility. I agree with that too, the Sandy Stone. Bambi 1830, the Catholic Church is right, so you are wrong. Yeah, that was the main argument, Bambi, yes, that you made about Trent Horn. He's doing the very worst type of apologetics. I was talking to my pastor friend today. I said, he's doing presuptialism, which is to presume that the Catholic Church is true. So therefore, my arguments are going to come from that. It's just like the evangelicals that say they just presume that the Bible is true and they presume that God exists. Therefore, no, you have to be better than that. I'm sorry, that's terrible arguing, and it doesn't do anybody any good. And I felt like basically Jacob Hansen did a solid job. I talked to him on the phone today, said you did a good job, Jacob, but I really feel like you need a better person to debate. And I actually think I might have an idea who that will be. And I made a suggestion to him, and let's just see where this goes, because I think it might make for a very interesting conversation. I'm still talking with Jacob, but who could it be? Who could it be? An evangelical who knows the Book of Mormon and knows the Restoration really well, but also isn't a hater of it? I don't know. Somebody will come to mind. So either way, okay, KP, you are the best, Steve. You always seem to hit the nail on the head. Okay, good. Thanks, KP. KP, I was raised Catholic, spent a lot of time as an atheist, and now I'm LDS. Wow. Jacob did great in the debate, even though he acts like a bit of a lunkhead on Twitter. Okay, Jacob, we were called a lunkhead by a fellow Latter-day Saints. What do you say to that? Let's see. Sandy Stone. Well, Bambi, Robert Boylan is probably the most knowledgeable. Well, I don't know. I'm not so sure about that, to be honest with you. I think he's read a lot of books. Bambi, LDS debater. I don't know. I don't know. I think Jacob Hansen. The one thing I like about Jacob Hansen is that he's his own man, and he doesn't have like an institutional attachment to any organization that he has to defend everything. I find Jacob to be an interesting guy. He's a guy that's willing to go and say Brigham Young was wrong about the black ban. He was racist. You can't, somebody who's working for the church or for BYU probably can't say that. Also, for somebody who's working for an apologetics organization probably can't say that. So I think Jacob has a degree of freedom as a debater that maybe a lot of these other people do not. Janine, could it be someone whose name starts with an S? Maybe. I don't know. But, it is interesting. Coincidentally, isn't it interesting that 2 years ago I went on Mormon Stories and gave a naturalistic explanation for the Book of Mormon? In other words, if there's no God, there is no angels, there's no supernatural. Well, how does one talk about the Book of Mormon? What's the argument that one could make? And I did a 3-hour off the top of my head, no preparation, no notes, naturalistic explanation of the Book of Mormon, which I argue is a really strong argument. Now, I think that that's an interesting take, and I think it would be worthy of discussion. So you never know. Maybe that person whose name starts with S might be a really good person to have a civil conversation with Mr. Hansen. So we'll see where that goes. And yes, Bambi says a naturalistic argument would be much better than Horn. But see, this is the other thing. Imagine this scenario. If we found this magical unicorn that technically should not exist, and this unicorn is able to go and debate Jacob Hansen and give their argument, a naturalistic argument. Again, this mysterious person who I'm sure nobody has any idea that who they're talking about. And then that same person turn around and debate an evangelical apologist arguing in favor of the Book of Mormon. Now that, my friends, would be fun, and that would be interesting. And it also goes to show how we can actually, I think, see, this is the thing. If you're really good at what you're doing, if you are an apologist, then you should be able to steel man your opponent's arguments. And if you're unable to do that, you're doing bad apologetics. I think that it's just crazy. I think it's so pitiful that on our side, they're just using 1980s Walter Martin countercult stuff. It's irrelevant. We've moved on from that. Yeah, I mean, like when I was talking to Jacob this morning, Jacob goes to me and says, Trent was talking about view of the Hebrews. I mean, come on, folks. If you haven't, I mean, I'll make an argument about the view of the Hebrews, or somebody will, I'm sure. But to use the the B.H. Roberts arguments about view of the Hebrews and not more modern ones, I mean, come on, like you can do better, Trent. I was really disappointed. I was hoping for actually a positive conversation. And when I say that, what does a positive conversation look like when you have one person saying that they don't believe in the Book of Mormon, you have the other one saying that they do? The positive conversation is that both sides are able to make really good points and move the ball. I really feel like it was just a circular conversation. No ground was made either way. And we're stuck right where we've been for decades. And so it was not a really productive conversation. Jacob can spike the football, say that he won, and I think you could argue that he did. But where does that leave us 48 hours later in the conversation with the restoration? We're in the same spot. And so I think it's really important to have really good give and take and people who are knowledgeable of the subject. Trent wasn't very knowledgeable, and Jacob was prepared and ready to go. And I thought he did a really good job. But I want him to, I think we should continue the conversation. Bambi, okay, the Needler. Is the debater meaning you? Your name starts with the letter S. I don't know, Needler. Are you needling me? So that's just something I'm throwing out there. I'm not like married to the idea, but I do think that there's some merit to this idea. So we'll see where this goes. I don't want to like make this about me or anything like that, but I do think that after watching Trent Horn and also recognizing that I've watched all the evangelicals throughout the years make their debates, arguments against Mormonism and make absolutely no progress, and they're still using old bad arguments. I think it's just time we have a better conversation and people benefit. Look, if a person does really good research that you're opposed to, but it's really good research and brings something to the table, it gives you something to think about, gives you food for thought, that's good. And vice versa. Having conversations that are actually making progress and actually moving the conversation along rather than get stuck in these debates from the 1980s. Heck, I mean, let's just do John Ankerberg shows again and have debates. I know that's an old reference there, but basically that's what it is. It's not making any progress at all. So the time has come for us to have a different conversation. I propose we start doing it now as opposed to doing the old stuff. Okay. Let me just get caught up here. KP, I think most mainstream Christians assume Mormonism is totally intellectually undefensible. Trent seemed taken by surprise at the strength of Jacob's arguments. It's good to be the underdog sometimes. Yeah. And I think that there's an arrogance there. People who have these opinions actually haven't spent any time in the restoration, haven't spent time engaging their scriptures and talking and reading and studying. And when you do, I think you will be humbled a little bit in your approach. I think if you're looking for their materials just to go and bash and attack, yeah, you can do that. But guess what? You're not going to learn anything. And you're not going to, nobody's going to learn anything from you either. Just maybe how to do debating tactics. But I'm not interested in debating tactics. I'm interested in having conversations. I thought Trent did better than you thought, and I'm sympathetic to LDS, though I don't think he could have done as good as possible. I agree there was room for improvement. Okay, thanks, Prep Project. Hellfire Agency, man, I would love a chance at Jacob Hansen. I don't think he would debate an ex-mole like me since his debate with his brother. I don't think he would debate an ex-mole since his debate with his brother. Okay, Hellfire Agency, let's see. I don't know what Jacob wants to debate John DeLynn or RFM or Bill Reel. I don't know if that will happen or not, but isn't that really just having the same conversation we've been having already? I don't know if anything would bring a lot of eyeballs to the table, but I don't think either side is going to think their side won. I don't think any progress gets made. I want to actually have an interesting conversation, although I'm all for it. I think we should do more debates with different voices and different perspectives. I don't think there should be an either or proposition. Yeah, so a couple more things I want to talk about just real quick. Thanks, first of all, for everybody participating in the chat. And if you'd like to get a shout out from me, and you might make a donation, that'd be great. I love it when people donate. So if you can leave a donation in the super chat, that'd be great. Oh, okay. Hellfire Agency. I had a really good conversation debate with Jacob Esbill recently about the Nauvoo expositor. Oh, okay. I think I think I've heard that one, or I'm aware of it. Yeah, Hellfire Agency. Feel free to reach out to me. Bambi 1830. It would turn into I made a video about that from both sides. Yeah. The Sandy Stone. I thought some of his arguments were okay versus Catholicism, i.e., no archaeological evidence of Moses. Why would you expect the Book of Mormon? But I found myself wondering if that logic would hold. Outside versus debate. Yeah. KP, do you have a Patreon or anything like that? I feel like I owe you a couple bucks after all the hours I spent enjoying your content. So KP, I do have links in the description of this video for Patreon, PayPal, and Venmo. And also you could make a donation here in the super chat. So it's all right there for you. Yes, Sandy Stone, I think that there's the people who take the position that the Book of Mormon has anachronisms or is not historical. And I'm using this in the context of Protestants who believe in the Bible, evangelicals in particular, that unless they're willing to also address the anachronisms in the Bible, the fact that we have zero archaeological evidence for the Exodus. I was just talking on the phone with a pastor today. I said, look, and with Jacob, I said, all we need to do is find one garbage heap in the Sinai Peninsula that dates to the time of the Exodus and it has no pig bones in it. And then we've proven the Exodus. We don't even have that. So if we have millions of people wandering for 40 years in Sinai, we don't have any archaeological evidence there, then why would they be arguing against the archaeological evidence of the Book of Mormon? I think that's a fair question, and that's something I think that needs to be addressed. But until Christians are willing to address those issues on their side, I think they need to quit worrying about the claims made by the Latter-day Saints in the Book of Mormon, because, Houston, we got a problem here. I just think that's my thing. I blabber sometimes, but I do feel like it's disingenuous and to be a Bible-believing Christian and attack the Book of Mormon. Like they say, the Book of Mormon is the one book you can have an opinion of, but have never read it. And unfortunately, I don't feel like a lot of these people actually read it. And I haven't read it cover to cover, but I've read large sections of it and studied and pondered a lot of it and really done some investigations. I think it'd be really a cool conversation. Okay, so a couple more things. Next week, I'm going to be interviewing Matt Harris, who wrote the book Second Class Saints. As I mentioned last week, I probably would have been one of the first people to interview him. Unfortunately, my medical condition kept me from doing that. I was talking to him about doing an interview like in April when the book came out. But April's when everything happened and might turn my world upside down. And again, appreciate everybody's prayers. I'm also going to be interviewing Evan Charley. She is going to talk about the recent changes in the handbook regarding transgender people. Evan Charley, she is a transgendered female, bisexual, polyamorous individual who is part of the Restoration, but is more of an independent Mormon now. She's recently left the Community of Christ, and she wants to talk about the handbook changes done. So again, we talk to everybody. Remember, all the voices are heard here, right? So I think that's an important story to hear. And again, just watch my interview on Zion Media that was released last night. I thought it was really good. and then I'd really like to hear people's people have gotten back to me on Facebook about they really enjoyed my interview or the panel discussion that we did on Mormonism with the Worth this week. Also going to be interviewing the first week of September. I'll be on the Clarity Project, the Clarity podcast with Claire, who's been on my program. We're going to talk about suffering and suffering and loneliness, which is what I've been going through in many ways. I have the advantage of having a platform and a great social network, and also a great support tinnitus support group that's been very helpful to me. But I also think that I want to talk to people who know people who are suffering. Please reach out to those people. They need you. So often people suffer in loneliness and despair. I think it's really important that you reach out to people that are hurting and suffering. Just a little bit means a lot to these people. Some of them are maybe at a place where they don't want to interact, but at least maybe them knowing that you've made an attempt to reach out to them would be appreciated. Cranial design. I'm not sure what progress has been made in the last 2,000 years. I'm surprised that God continues to allow Christianity to branch into so many sects rather than converge on the truth. Yeah, and of course, I think it's important that we talk about the branches, all the different convergences of the Restoration. That's 2 volumes now of all the different sects and expressions within the Restoration as well. So this isn't just a 2,000-year-old problem with Christianity. It's also a 200-year-old problem with the Restoration. Why does God allow so many different sects within the Restoration as well? I think that's also an important question to ask as well. Oh, KP says, just became a paid subscriber on Patreon. The anti-Mormon online space is badly in need of a neutral, non-judgment media outlet where all the different perspectives can be heard. Thanks, KP, for becoming a Patreon. I really appreciate it. I don't really push Patreon and donating too much because I don't want to make this about money. I just feel, though, that if people want to bless me, just make sure I didn't. Yeah, if people want to bless me. But it's very, Janine, thank you so much. $20. Thank you so much. Let's celebrate their 3rd super on a live stream. Okay, Janine, thank you. Congrats for your 3rd super. And $20. That's awesome. Thank you. Really, God bless. It's been a couple weeks since I've received a donation in the super chat. So it's nice to know that I'm still loved by you all. And a little bit goes a long way. You know, I am actually considering flying out to St. George for John Whitmer next month. I was just looking at some rates to fly out there. I can fly into Las Vegas relatively inexpensive. And I try to see if somebody can give me a ride from Las Vegas to St. George. I've always wanted to get out there. Maybe I'll be able to make it to John Whitmer after all this year. It's not 100%, but I'm kind of thinking it's in the cards now, more so than I did before. So keep me in your prayers. I'll probably make the decision sooner rather than later. Cultural Hall. Nice, Janine. Cultural Hall, Hellfire, what would you want to debate Jacob on? Okay. That's a great question. Cultural Hall, let's reach out to me sometime. Let's talk. I think you were on a friend's program lately, and I'm like, well, why didn't you reach out to me yet? Let's talk. So yeah, just to summarize, I do want to direct people to watch my interview or the panel discussion on Mormonism with the Murph about the Fairview, Texas thing. Again, I take a strong First Amendment position, but I'm not taking it for one particular group only. I'm taking it for all religious groups. I'm taking it for the Satanic Temple. I'm taking it for atheists or ethical. Like there's a group called the Ethical Union that developed in the 19th century. They should be treated like a church. I think, non-theistic religions, if you will, or groups and organizations should also have these same exemptions. So I'm not trying to say that only certain groups get this. I think that all ethical systems, whether they're religious or irreligious, should have some special First Amendment protections. Hellfire Agency, anything related? Oh, Paul Black. Okay, wait. Cultural Hall. Okay, Jacob Mayberry. I enjoyed your comments on Murphy's channel. I thought I was going to be alone supporting the church's position. Yeah, Jacob. See, I'm full of surprises. I think people that try to pigeonhole me or try to say that I'm such and such or this or that, or they use vulgar, horrible things to call me names, especially from the Latter-day Saint apologetics community or even the Christian community, when they spread lies about me and they stereotype me. That's coming from the apologetics camps. So we need to be aware of all these groups as well. Not all, but some. Cultural Hall. Hey, Jacob. Hellfire Agency. Anything related to epistemological epistemology and critical thinking, proofs of the existence of God or any Mormon subject. Okay, so that's Jacob's talking. Hey, Cultural Hall, Hellfire. He's thrown out a recent challenge to Exmos to debate him on Book of Mormon. He wants the opponent to defend the position that Joseph, I'm saying, is assuming did not write the book. Well, Cultural Hall, I don't know if you were in here lately, but I did make a suggestion earlier about who I think would be a really good person to have that debate with Jacob. And so let's see. Carolyn Madijanka? Is there a true church? John B. left LDS and ended up Orthodox. I just want Jesus. Yeah, I think actually that's what we should all strive for, is to be like Jesus. Cultural Hall, you'll just have to get back to me or watch the beginning of the episode, because I dropped some bombs about who I think would be a really good person. Whoa, holy shnikes. KP gave us $100. Oh my gosh. So not only are you a Patreon, you donated $100. Oh man, maybe I should stay on here a little longer. Let's celebrate their first super on a live stream. Thank you, KP. That is freaking awesome. Thank you. I'm going to send you a heart, and I got to send, can I send Janine a heart? I don't know if I can. No, I can't. I can't send Janine a heart. I don't know why, but I can send KP a heart. Maybe because he gave me $100. Either way. Hold on. Just get off of there. So thanks, Janine. Thanks, KP. That's awesome. I'll watch. Thanks. Okay. Stephen, I like you, and I would love to interview you on my program or come on yours about depression and atheism, because our stories are similar on that. Okay. Yeah. Let's do that, Hellfire Agency. Let's talk. I'm always willing. I'm talking to anybody. That's the thing. I'll have people on who hate me. I'll have people who do not like me on my program and give them my platform. That's the kind of person I am. I don't have like an axe to grind, and I just respect people where they're at, even if they don't like me. And there are people I have on my program that I don't like. It's trying to be an adult and be civil. It shows that we can be civil even to people and ideas that we don't like. I think we just need to cool our temperatures down, especially in this crazy country that we live in, that everybody's at each other's throat. Cultural Hellfire, I'll give you a sub and check out your stuff. Okay. Hellfire, I'm Joe Rollins, ex-Mojo, the author of the Core Horror Argument, by the way. Okay, great. So that's some really interesting stuff there. So yeah, maybe we're getting some people set up. Maybe we're setting up debates. Maybe we're going to do multiple debates. Maybe we're going to have multiple conversations from different perspectives, which is what we love to do here at Mormon Book Reviews. Let's see, Carolyn Madijanka. You're healed from depression now, Steve? I would say that, yeah, I am. And I suffered lifelong depression about a year and a half ago. I got off of Wellbutrin. I was taking 300 milligrams of Wellbutrin about a year and a half ago, because I was like, I don't need to take this anymore. I'm healed. That's part of my story. Watch my Mormon Stories episodes. I talk about how Mormonism saved an evangelical's life on Mormon Stories, mind you. Cultural, you're on TikTok, right? Okay. So we're getting some people talking to each other and getting different YouTube channels and different TikTokers talking to each other. That's just super cool. Oh, it's just Carolyn. Okay, I'll just call you Carolyn, and then I won't try to butcher your name anymore. Which, of course, my last name often gets butchered as well. That happens all the time. So I don't take it personally. But yes, Carolyn, we'll just call you Carolyn. That works for me. Okay. So I wanted to add, since I'm here and there seems to be a lot of people in the chat and a lot of people watching us right now, before I wrap this up, I want to ask, do you have any questions or comments for me? Do you have any suggestions for guests, topics that we can cover? Do you have any questions about anything about me? I don't know. I always love to open up these chats for people. I love doing them. We always get a great response from people. Most of the people who watch this actually watch it after the live feed. So I really try to be consistent in doing just Fridays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. But unfortunately, we ran into some sound issues. So I decided to do a special Saturday night alive here on Mormon Book Reviews. Okay, so I'm going to just keep it open here for another minute or two. Got a lot of people talking here. Give thumbs up, folks. If you're in here, give some thumbs up to this video so that it gets in front of more people, even especially after it airs. It's always good to have a lot of momentum with these videos coming out. And tell me just real quick, okay, I'm not hearing from anybody, but what are you doing this weekend? Anything special? I'm going to be hanging out with some friends a little later on this evening. I'm going to hop in the shower in a little bit. I'm got a lot of stuff going here, folks, working on a lot of different stories, having great conversations with people. Actually had a good conversation with Jacob Hansen on the phone this morning. Thank you for the thumbs up. We got a few thumbs up since I asked. I appreciate it. Jacob, Jacob Bayberry, giving my son a baby blessing. Oh, that's cool, Jacob. Thanks for sharing that with our audience. And it's really important. I do love the religious ritual. I think that it can bring a lot of good to people's lives. I think that people who want us to go secular don't realize the spiritual connection that we have to the divine as well as to each other as being fellow image bearers. And again, I was an atheist for 13 years, so I'm not hating on atheists, but I do think that we all are hardwired to be spiritual. That's what got us here, gave us, if you will, an evolutionary advantage, was our shared humanity and compassion and looking out for each other, burying our dead as opposed to leaving them there, having a sense of something that's bigger than ourselves. Religious ritual is what makes us human in many ways, and I think it's really important that we do not abandon that. Jacob Mayberry giving us, okay, Cultural Hall, right on, Jacob. Babby 1830, congrats. Carolyn says, enjoying some alone time and you live. That is great. Yeah, so I'm enjoying myself. Okay, so that's what you're doing for the weekend, Carolyn. That's great. Now, I don't think my friend here, what's his name? Oh, Leroy from England. He stays up till 1 o'clock in the morning every Friday night to watch me live. I did it an hour earlier than normal, just so that Leroy could jump on, but he might be doing some stuff. So Leroy, I kind of came an hour early just for you. I can't promise you I'll be doing that next Friday, but if you do watch this in the thing, actually, that's one of the reasons I did it. Okay, Hellfire Agency. I think that religion as a product of evolution is very much valid. Yep. I think that that's a valid argument to make. Bambi, me too. Bambi says it's so prolific, must be deep in what it is to be human. Yes, see, and that's the thing. I think that the fear that I have, just speaking purely naturalistically here, the fear that I have with people is that once they sever their ties from the spiritual and something that's bigger than them, it leaves them untethered. And I do see that in a lot of the ex communities, whether it's ex-evangelical, ex-Jehovah's Witness, ex-Mormon. There's a lot of people that feel like they've had the rug pulled out from under them, and because of that, they just abandon belief in God altogether. And you find high rates of alcoholism and depression and drug use. I'm not being stereotypical. There's some people that's perfectly fine, and I'm not saying the reason why you left is sin. I'm not going to make any of these arguments, but I will say that I do feel like they feel like there's something missing in their lives. And I also do look at just what happens to societies that don't believe in God anymore. Guess what? They don't have as many kids. Isn't that interesting? And that, of course, when we're talking about the human species, the reason why we got here is that humans had a lot of kids. So, and partly because they believe in something bigger than themselves, and many others, other contributing factors. So I think that we need to be aware of what happens to secular societies in which their churches are made into nightclubs. Nobody goes to church anymore, because if we look in Europe, there's other things will fill that void. And I don't know if I want that happening here in America. Janine, there was a video somewhere about a house uncovered near Jerusalem where a prophet named Lehi used to live. I don't remember the details. I can look it up. Did you hear anything about that? Yes, I'm aware. I've heard of that. I think it was House of Lehi or something like that, or whatever. Yeah. Okay, Bambi says, Janine, I think it was an area of Old Jerusalem where the metal trade was, if I remember from Jerusalem Center, but it's been a while. Janine, if possible, could you make an episode about it if it's true? I'd love to know more about the subject. Jordan Tanner, Mormon Book Reviews. Do you have any book recommendations for us? Okay. Yes, I have a lot of book recommendations. And let's start with the very first book that I ever reviewed here on Mormon Book Reviews, which was A Pentecostal Reads the Book of Mormon, a literary and theological introduction by my good friend, Dr. Christopher Thomas, who's one of the top Pentecostal theologians in the world. He recently stepped down as the founding president of the Book of Mormon Studies Association. This book was printed by the press of the Pentecostal Church, the Church of God, Cleveland, Tennessee. So, and I discovered him on Mormon Stories. So don't think that everything that's on Mormon Stories is anti-Mormon. It just isn't. And my appearances on them is just an example of it. Hellfire Agencies, I will send you an email. I think people who leave religion and immediately resort to nihilism are experiencing existential anxiety, and that is what my personal journey is all about. Yeah, I think that's important to talk about that. Bambi says, Dr. Jeff Chadwick would be an amazing guest. Leads the archaeology where Goliath lived. Oh, that's really interesting. So he's doing some Philistine digging, huh? Janine, Bambi, thank you. Bambi has lived off and on in Jerusalem for decades. So referring to Dr. Jeff Chadwick. Thank you. He would know the Lehigh House stuff as well. Thank you, Bambi, for making that recommendation. So, well, real quick, I'm going to sign off here in just a second, unless you got any more questions or comments in the thing, or if you want to make a quick super chat endorsement. He wrote this, and he also wrote the Stone Man, the Stone Manger book. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Always good to hear that. Thanks, Bambi, for sharing that with us. Yeah, Bambi's a good friend. He actually doesn't live too far from here, and actually attended my church service a while back. So I hope. Oh, did I give too much information? I think you're fine. And glad your health has improved. Be well. Thanks from Culture Hall. Thank you, everybody. First of all, I just want to thank you. This has been a challenging weekend. I've had a few things happen to me that been kind of like, whatever. Little stressed out. I had a package that was supposed to be delivered to me with some important books that was sent to the wrong place, and I'm trying to track it down, and it's driving me crazy. And FedEx is, I don't know. I'm just ticked right now that they did that, that they made that mistake. This is really important box of books I was wanting to get. And so, yeah, there was one, Jordan, I made one suggestion. Another one of my favorites. I love Rough Stone Rolling. I also, have you ever read Don Bradley's book about the Lost 116 Pages? I think that's a fascinating book. One of my favorite books of all time. There's a million other books here that we could talk about as well. So yeah. All right, folks, remember, what's the most important thing? Remember, all the voices of the Restoration will be heard here on Mormon Book Reviews.